Welcome in, friends. I'm Reed Cowan. Our team coast to coast and worldwide is bringing news streaming into these monitors here behind me. Here's the bottom line. When we see it, you're going to see it. Right now, all eyes are on Washington, D.C. and world leaders at NATO, plus some real nail-biter moments in courtrooms in New York and New Mexico. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. Okay, so our cameras are fired up in New Mexico, and actor Alec Baldwin on trial, opening statements in that courtroom at this very moment. So Baldwin faces a felony charge for the accidental shooting of a cinematographer and a director on that New Mexico film set shooting the movie Rust in 2021. We're watching this one closely. You're seeing all the preparations go as they begin to lay out their case. Also, our video feeds take us to New York City for closing arguments in the corruption trial against U.S. Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. So we know this. He's accused of taking bribes in exchange for helping the Egyptian government and its officials. We're talking about gold bars, nearly $500,000 in cash found in an FBI home search. That's playing big into prosecutors' arguments today. The defense says prosecutors haven't really come very close to proving that any of that gold or cash was given to Menendez specifically as a bribe. So when news breaks in either the Baldwin or the Menendez trial, we'll get it to you quickly right here on the stream. But right now, we want to take you live to what is happening in Washington, D.C. So let's set the stage. President Joe Biden continues his push for NATO nations to pay their fair share in defense spending while also backing up Ukraine's fight against Russia. And hey, we just got this. Our video feeds bring us this very moment that just happened at the NATO summit. Look close, you'll see people you recognize there. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, both meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky is in the United States to talk about his need for more money and more munitions to fight against Russia, and key to that will be members of Congress. So let's talk live to CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gossis. All right, so that NATO summit beginning right now, and as we just saw with seeing Zelensky with high-ranking members of Congress, this is going to be about the argument and the narrative relative to NATO and Ukraine.
That's right, Reed. It's great to be with you again. Yes, the NATO summit is continuing here in Washington, D.C., where Zelensky, yes, has made a visit to Capitol Hill. And world leaders are continuing to filter into the convention center here in Washington. There was a family photo today. We saw President Biden shaking hands with his counterparts from around the world. We're still awaiting, of course, the alliance-wide communique that will lay out exactly what the members have agreed to throughout the course of this summit in terms of support to Ukraine, in terms of its membership prospects, and in terms of warnings to countries like China and North Korea that have been providing material support to the Russian government over the course of its military conflict in Ukraine. Earlier today, we heard from Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who announced that F-16 fighter jets are finally making their way to Ukraine. They expect to be flying in Ukraine's skies later this summer. He said that's a long-awaited capability that's been asked for by President Zelensky. And it's in addition, of course, to the more robust package of defense capabilities that President Biden announced last night, which includes Patriot battery missile systems, also a big ask by Zelensky. The president said last night that all those things would be forthcoming, and we're, of course, expecting to see him have a solo press conference tomorrow evening.
Well, we also have the opportunity, Olivia, and we thank you for that update. We have an opportunity to listen to President Joe Biden speaking at that very event right now.
It's not happened by chance, but by choice. At our summit 2 years ago, we launched a plan to modernize our deterrence and our defense. And today, we have to ask ourselves, what is next? How can we keep making the shield stronger? One answer must be to strengthen our industrial base. Right now, Russia is on a wartime footing with regard to defense production. They're significantly ramping up their production of weapons, munitions, and vehicles. And they're doing it with the help of China, North Korea, and Iran. We cannot, in my view, we cannot allow the alliance to fall behind. The fact is that so many of let me put it this way. I'm very pleased that today all NATO members are making the pledge to expand our industrial base and our industrial capacity. Like our defense spending commitment, this is a critical step to maintaining our security. The first time ever, every NATO nation is pledging to develop plans for defense production at home. That means, as an alliance, we'll become more innovative and competitive. And we're able to produce more critical defense equipment more quickly than we may need it. You know, we will not be surpassed, we cannot be surpassed by anyone when it comes to our readiness. Here at home, Americans have seen the power of investments like these. In my administration, we've already invested $30 billion in defense manufacturing to restart or expand production across 35 of our states. We're investing billions more. The result, stronger supply chains, a stronger economy, a stronger military, and a stronger nation. Let me close with this. This new pledge sends an unmistakable message to the world that every NATO member is committed to doing their part to keep the alliance strong. We can and will defend every inch of NATO territory, and we'll do it together. And that we're investing in our future strength to ensure NATO will always be ready for whatever threats we will face should be a clear message we're sending to the world. So I want to thank you, every NATO member, for your commitment for our shared security. And I will now ask the press to depart so we can get started.
Thank you so much, President Biden, for those remarks. And as the President said, this ends the public part of the meeting, and we ask the media to depart, and then we will continue.
All right, so you see that NATO feed, they're going to this graphic, and that is because the press has been invited to leave. So let's just wrap that up there. That is President Biden reading from prepared remarks to reporters and members of NATO, sort of laying out new commitments. Listen, the heartbeat of NATO is this: an attack against one nation in that alliance is seen as an attack against all. So that alliance is crucial and critical, according to the Biden administration and everybody that's in that room. Joe Biden also sounding like he's also on the campaign trail, laying out what he has done, speaking about infrastructure and defense spending and building that formidable opposition to Russia and what's going on in Ukraine. We'll be talking about that quite a bit in the days to come. But meanwhile, former President Donald Trump is capitalizing on a lot of criticisms about Joe Biden. Trump held his first rally since the debate, mocking Biden's performance and challenging him to not only another debate, but little play there, a golf game. Trump also laid out plans for mass deportations in a second term. A lot of people are also wondering if Donald Trump would announce a running mate. One that really keeps coming up as a potential running mate is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. So Trump's team continues to tease a VP candidate pick any day. We understand that announcement may come today or tomorrow. Let's talk about what any president is going to have to face by way of disaster declarations, and that is the aftermath from storms like this. Our video monitors right now taking us to Texas, where we see this. The town of Surfside Beach, look at that. It is in tatters because of that storm named Beryl. Really just shaved the rooftops off of some of those homes. People literally digging out, some even carrying what they have out with paper bags, drinking water and taking breaks. There's Zoe. It's hot there as they clean up. Now we understand the concern is in the Northeast.
Yes, and the heat is actually already on in the Northeast as well. So that is also something to keep in mind. The heat, along with the remnants of Beryl, as it makes its way across northeastern United States. I'm kind of standing on it right now, and it will continue to traverse across the Northeast, even potentially impacting places like New England. So we're going to send things over to our station in Boston. Jason Michael will have more details on what's going on up there.
Zoe, what's really interesting about the heat that's affecting us here in New England, our average high temperatures are in the low 80s, 81 degrees here in Boston, and this is the third day now that we're talking about high temperatures and even an expanded heat advisory for day number 3. As you can imagine, at this point in the year, the jet stream is roaring up to the north, but what's also aiding and abetting to the heat here in New England is a heat dome, and that's also going to be expanding and moving over towards the east. Now we're dealing with the remnants of Beryl, also unimpeded heat and also humidity roaring up the I-95 corridor. corridor. Scattered thunderstorms are now pushing eastbound for the rest of the week into the start of the weekend, and we keep our cloud cover around overnight as well as in the daytime, and that will likely keep our overnight temperatures just as much as our daytime temperatures elevated above the average. Around 90 degrees expected tomorrow, yet another day of dealing with the heat and humidity through the weekend and even into early next week as daytime highs remain in the mid to low 90s and feels like temperatures in the mid to upper 90s. Back to you.
Yeah, we're not only dealing with the heat, humidity, and severe weather in the east, but the heat is on in the west, and I'll break down more details coming up in just a bit. Reed.
So let's get you back to Texas right now, Zoe, and the impact of all of this. You're seeing that on your screen. The lights are out for more than 1 million customers there. In fact, our team continues watching these latest numbers from utility companies. This coming to us from CenterPoint Energy. They are reporting 1,354,000 plus customers still affected. But again, that's just one of the utilities in Texas. You see here behind me an outage map from a company called Entergy. That's another one of the companies that keeps the lights on, or at least is trying. But you see all of those marks. It's like a kid just took a pen to that map right there. But instead, it was a storm. And you can almost see what was the storm's path by way of all of the outages. So it is a Herculean effort to get the lights back on. And, you know, as we talk about the people without electricity, as we talk about all of them and the danger of health problems that are really a risk because of this, we are looking at some people stepping forward because no heat, no electricity, no air conditioning. And that is really a scary situation. As power companies say, it could be days before the lights are back on. But get this is what we do in America. Help is on the way. These electricians you see here, they're not from Houston. They're from Austin, Texas, and they hit the road heading to Houston to lend their crews and their trucks to speed the relief in that July heat. This job is very risky, though. We're talking about down branches, down trees, and in just a minute, I'm going to show you some of that video. But that really puts these electricians working side by side with tree trimmers, and that provides some new danger, some new risk. Listen.
I'm sure heat's going to be the issue.
For me, I'm most worried about the electricity because you can fix a snake bite, but you can't really fix a electrical burn. We want to go home to our families with all our fingers and toes.
Okay, so CenterPoint Energy repeats what they've said for days now. They hope to have power back on for about 1 million customers sometime today, but we've heard that for days. We know it's a big job. That's why those crews from Austin are moving in. Also there, joining us live from Channelview, Texas, outside of Houston, CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca. Omar, set the scene for us. And look, we're just seeing in real time the downed trees and how that could really complicate things.
Yeah, absolutely. We are here in Channelview, which is about 20 minutes east of Houston. And you mentioned the total number that we're seeing of folks without power in Texas is about 1.6 million. CenterPoint Energy has got the bulk of those customers. They say that they've restored 850,000 customers. That's about a third of everybody that was knocked out. But let me tell you what's frustrating customers that they've been telling us. Usually energy providers have an outage map so you can go and check in and see if my power's back on or if it's off. Their map for CenterPoint has been offline since May because of a different storm that knocked it off, and they haven't got it back up. So Texans here are getting pretty creative. There's a burger chain here called Whataburger. They also have an app. Well, Whataburger is basically telling you what restaurants are open and not open because of electricity. So Texas residents, especially here in the southeast Texas and the Houston area, are logging on to see if their neighborhood Whataburger is open because that is a sign to them that they may have power. So it's come to that at this point.
Well, a little lightness to it. American is apple pie and hamburgers. Omar, we appreciate you so much. We're glad those lines wrapped around that tree behind you are not live right now. And our best to electric crews who are out and about in the aftermath of the storm. We got to show you this. This is video from about 15 miles away from where you just saw Omar. And this really makes the case about those down lines and trees. This is a Houston suburb. It's called Crosby. And there's more storm damage, snapped trees there, and down power lines, and just a mess there. So many people being told just stay away from the trees, stay away from the power lines. Don't assume that the electric company has cut off those lines to treat every one of those lines as if they are live wires, because they can be. But so far, no word of any injuries from anybody getting a shock from those down lines. We'll be back as we watch live updates from a corruption trial against a heavy hitter out of New Jersey. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, you're watching CBS News 24/7. We'll keep watching these monitors. All right, we've got our cameras fired up in New Jersey, where closing arguments continue today in the corruption trial of embattled Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. His lawyers telling the jury this week that prosecutors really have failed to prove a single charge, but prosecutors say Menendez put his power up for sale. So joining us live from outside that courtroom is CBS New York's Alice Gaynor. Alice, tell us about the timeline. It's really verdict watch now, correct?
That's correct. So right now, an attorney for Senator Robert Menendez, Adam Fee, he just concluded his closing statement. He began yesterday, finished up today. They are currently on a lunch break. When they return at 2:05 Eastern Time, that is when attorneys for his two co-defendants, Wael Hanna and Fred Davies, they will give their closing arguments. After that concludes, prosecution will have a rebuttal. After that, the judge, of course, has to charge the jury. So it's likely they're not expected to get the case today. Most likely it'll be tomorrow on Thursday. And then, of course, they'll begin their deliberations. And you can never predict how long it's going to take a jury. We could have a verdict as soon as tomorrow, but we really don't know.
All right. Well, we know you are there and at the ready when and if that happens. We thank you so much for joining us live from New York. Hey, our cameras and crews are also at another big trial in our nation, the manslaughter trial of actor Alec Baldwin. That is happening at this very moment in New Mexico. Specifically, we're talking about opening statements. Baldwin faces a felony involuntary manslaughter charge in the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. You remember in 2021, Baldwin held a revolver on the set of Rust. When that gun fired, Hutchins died at the scene. Director Joel Souza also wounded. They're hearing opening arguments right now. We understand a pool of 16 jurors, including 4 alternates, in that courtroom right now. So today is really the day for those jurors to see how both sides will formulate and lay out their cases. If Alec Baldwin is found guilty, he could face 18 months in prison. Our video monitors at this very moment bringing us this new video showing Israeli troops fighting in Gaza. You can see it right there. The IDF is the source for this video. You can see them running and shooting inside Gaza right now. So the Israeli military claims that Hamas and their allies used this specific location as a base to launch attacks. So that is their excuse for being in that specific area. Now, while this plays out, ceasefire talks are also resuming. So Hamas, knowing that this is now happening there inside Gaza, says a big warning. They say these operations threaten to end those talks about a ceasefire. We'll watch that closely. Our team will be back in just a minute with video from the monitors of 2 planes flying so close together it caused a lot of jaws to drop. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, you're watching CBS News 24/7. We want to get you to Santa Barbara County, California, and the largest wildfire in that state this year. This is the Lake Fire, and as it burns, there's an army of firefighters meeting it toe-to-toe. We're talking about more than 200 fire engines and 2,400 firefighters struggling against the heat and some pretty rough terrain out there. In fact, we can tell you by today, 1 structure has burned, 3 people injured. There are also evacuation warnings all throughout Santa Barbara County, people being told those evacuation warnings will stay in place for many days. That Lake Fire at this hour is only 16% contained, but focusing on the positive, when we talked to you yesterday at this time, it was 12% contained, so they are making some progress. Somebody who is aware of that progress being made is the governor of the state of California. You are watching in real time Governor Gavin Newsom speaking to people with some of those helicopters and airplanes that have been dropping the fire retardant on the many fires burning in California. Governor Gavin Newsom in recent days has not been in California while the fires have been raging. He has been trying to put out fires of a political sort on the stump for President Joe Biden. But now Gavin Newsom back in California. We understand he's speaking to first responders and firefighters and their families in Sacramento County, California. So far, no word as to whether the governor will ask for disaster declarations yet, but we'll be on top of that one all throughout the day. Hey, these fires out west are raging while temperatures really tempt triple digits. Look at the Las Vegas Strip there. Construction going on, and it's hot. In fact, firefighters are watching closely word from the National Weather Service, but no relief anytime soon, whether you are in Las Vegas or you're on the beach in the West Coast. We can tell you several deaths are suspected due to heat out of California. And even in Portland, Oregon, they're reporting this hour possibly 4 deaths also connected to the heat.
These are probably preventable deaths, based on the fact that we assume that they probably would not have expired if they had had better cooling options.
Yeah, we heard the mayor of San Jose, California, Matt Mahan, say the same thing, that these deaths are avoidable. We're talking to our partners at AccuWeather. Their numbers predict that various cities on the West Coast will break daily temperature records over the next several days. And so Zoe has been watching that. Zoe, this heat is not only something to talk about, it's something to be warned about.
Definitely. Heat is actually the #1 killer when it comes to weather-related events. So heat is no joke, and the heat, unfortunately, really not much of an end in sight anytime soon. And we can see 2 areas that we are closely watching, not just that huge heat dome on the West Coast that you can see just by looking at the lack of clouds, but all of the moisture on the East Coast is making the heat and the humidity even more unbearable. So that is something to keep in mind on the East Coast, but it's the West Coast that we're going to head on over to, and we're going to show you how hot it's going to get. Widespread excessive heat warnings, heat advisories, all of that gross stuff when it comes to summertime and when it comes to that heat. So just something to keep your eye on as we step out over the next 24, 36, 48 hours. The heat's going to last all week long and even into next week as well. These high temperatures, again, no joke. Widespread triple-digit rains, where in fact Salt Lake City could potentially break their all-time high temperature record tomorrow. They could potentially reach up to 108. Today, 103, though. That is still no joke. That is nothing to laugh about, with widespread excessive heat warnings, heat advisories. These are things that, again, you have to keep your eye on. Heat safety is going to be top of mind, top priority as we step out over the next couple of days. So if we take a look at the graphs behind me, show you where has that highest risk of heat illness. It's definitely going to be in Southern California, Southern Nevada, and over into Arizona. Again, that lasts today, that lasts into tomorrow as well, where we are going to be seeing that chance for heat-related illness going to be very, very high. So that is something that you have to keep your eye on, and make sure you drink a lot of water. Make sure that you are aware. Stay inside. Put on those sunglasses. And again, heat safety top of mind, not just today, but into tomorrow as well. Reed.
All right, you've got to see this video hot off of our monitors right now. Police dash cam video showing what looks like 2 planes about to smack right into each other in the skies. This video coming to us out of Syracuse, New York. Talk about a heart stopper there. Here's the backstory on this. That American Airlines flight had 79 people on board, cleared to land, and at the same time, it appears that the air traffic controller cleared a Delta flight with 80 people on board to take off. So the pilot for American saw something was off and then climbed to fly over the Delta flight for a few moments. But on the ground, it looked like this, but it was more like this. They were just on top of each other. In reality, the video really did make it look like a closer call than it actually was. But the FAA says investigators are looking at that, and they say that all told, those planes were about a few hundred feet apart. Still too close for comfort. Whew. When we come back, we're watching a lot of people who are concerned about what's going on in the world. Some of the biggest names in the world of Democrats talking about Joe Biden's campaign. We'll stream that live to you. Correspondent Ed O'Keefe joining us when we come back. CBS News 24/7. We'll be watching the monitors. Until then, back in a few. Well, sometimes our video monitors bring us photos or video, and this is video just into us of President Joe Biden meeting with many members there at NATO. He just got off of the microphone talking to members of the press and members of NATO, not only talking about NATO and the importance of the alliance, but also U.S. investments in NATO. But, you know, this is all playing out while President Biden continues to be dogged by questions about his candidacy after that presidential debate threw the Democratic Party into a tailspin. Some would say even turmoil. So today, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told MSNBC, quote, "It's up to the president whether he decides to stay in the race." Listen.
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. I think overwhelming support of the caucus. It's not for me to say. I'm not the head of the caucus anymore. But he's beloved. He is respected, and people want him to make that decision.
Well, joining us live now is CBS News senior White House correspondent, political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Okay, Ed, so what she just said, I have to say, it confused me a little bit because she kept saying, make that decision. I thought the decision was made.
Your ears are not deceiving you, and they're thinking and hearing that just as skeptically as we are, because you're right. We thought that her close ally, the president, had already decided earlier this week to go. What she seems to be signaling is based on what she's listening to based on what she's hearing from fellow colleagues, and she's always been very good at listening to her fellow House Democrats, they're not happy. They're worried, and they'd like him out of the race. That will be seen here at the White House and in his campaign up in Delaware as a big warning shot and a sign that they still have work to do to convince congressional Democrats that they can hold on. We just learned a little while ago that the president is dispatching his senior campaign aides, top strategist, the campaign chief, to meet with Senate Democrats tomorrow around lunchtime to go over some of the strategy and the polling they're seeing to try to stave off the concerns. We've not heard of any plans for a similar meeting among the House Democrats. They're concerned, remember, Reed, because there's a handful of seats out there in California where you are,
right,
up in suburban New York City and New Jersey, where Democrats believe they can win just enough of them to retake the majority if they can also hold on to all the other ones they currently have. It's mostly members who are running in those competitive districts across the Midwest, out in the Northeast, and in California, who've been wringing their hands and saying, I've got concerns about him being the candidate, because if he's depressing turnout, I may not have the turnout I need. I lose my seat, and Democrats lose the potential to take over the House. So that's where a lot of this nervousness for them is coming from. And that Pelosi's now saying this is a big flashing light, should be, at least a yellow one, telling the campaign, you have not convinced your fellow Democratic office holders that you are ready to take this on. Remember, he's got all those world leaders here in town. It's kind of hard to have a domestic political conversation with him when he's got such important foreign policy to deal with. But this also suggests this will bleed into next week, and there will be further conversations about what exactly he should do, just as Republicans are getting ready to meet for their convention in Milwaukee, and the president is scheduled to be going out west for campaign stops.
Well, and you know who Nancy Pelosi is close with is Adam Schiff. And you know who Adam Schiff is listening to a lot these days? Donors. And so when we talk about the narrative here, the question is the erosion of donors and the influence. In fact, Ed, just 3 weeks ago, actor and director George Clooney co-hosted a fundraiser that Biden attended. And now in a New York Times op-ed, George Clooney said today that Biden is not the same Biden as we saw just 4 years ago, that he was the same person he witnessed on the debate stage. So we're talking about an erosion here. In fact, the Ocean's 11 actor added, Ed, that Democratic Party leaders need to stop deflecting his debate performance. He even thinks it could be beneficial to hear from other Democrats about throwing their hat in the ring, like Vice President Kamala Harris or California Governor Gavin Newsom, who we have seen in recent days leave his fire-ridden state to be on the campaign trail and have that visibility. As to that concept of erosion, does what George Clooney have to say, having hosted that fundraiser and talking about donors, does that have anything that could sway Joe Biden to, as Nancy Pelosi says, make a decision?
I think this was also another warning shot, Reed, because most people watching are going to think, who the heck cares what he thinks?
Right.
Why didn't he just keep the movies? Well, to your point, he hosted this massive fundraiser that the president flew all the way back from Italy for, that also featured former President Obama, the actress Julia Roberts, and raised more than $20 million. And what he says in this op-ed is, this guy is no longer the big effing deal vice president that was there in 2010. He's not the guy that ran in 2020. And based on what I saw 2 weeks ago is what I also saw on the debate stage. That's a telling and important observation, because it's somebody saying, I have been in his presence in recent weeks, and based on my personal observations even before the debate, I'm concerned whether he has the ability to continue serving. You combine that alongside the observations of the journalist George Stephanopoulos, who spoke with him last Friday, who got caught by TMZ, telling somebody that he shouldn't serve for 4 years, and you think to yourself, well, who cares what he thinks? Again, another person who spent time face-to-face with the president, observing his behaviors and his mannerisms, saying, I've got concern. That's where the potential for them to resonate with everyday voters lays, is I've been with the guy. I've got issues with it. And yes, what Clooney also allows people to do, those that give big money to Democratic Party candidates and to the party overall, is say, I'm with George, I agree with what he's saying here, and this is what he's laying out there is a lot of what many of us have been hearing. Open it up, let other people potentially run or rally around the vice president, fix this quickly, and move on and defeat Donald Trump in the fall.
Wow. This, if it were sports, people would likely buy tickets to. Ed, thank you so much. We appreciate your insights there from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. Let's go and take you across the pond now, where police are searching North London for a man suspected of killing the family members of a BBC journalist. This is a crazy story. They believe that the suspect used a crossbow to commit triple murder. though they say other weapons may have also been used. So we want to bring in right now BBC's Paul Hawkins. He's live in London with the latest updates on this tragic case. When you hear something like this and you know that the person is on the run with, of all things, a crossbow, that has got to be making headlines across the pond.
Yeah, there has been big interest here. There have been media from across the world. I've seen reporters from the United States and also from Australia. So there is big interest in this story, and that's because it is actually incredibly rare. The number of homicides involving crossbows in the UK between 2011 and 2021 numbered only 10. So it is incredibly rare, but nonetheless, it is horrifying, and I can tell you that in the last few minutes, that manhunt has actually come to an end. This is from the local police force here in North London and to the counties that sit to the north of London. They say following an extensive search, Kyle Clifford, aged 26, was found in the Enfield area, that's an area of North London, by officers this afternoon. He is receiving medical treatment, having been found with injuries. No shots were fired by police. At this stage, we believe the suspect was known to the victims. They are appealing for anyone with information or footage to get in contact with them. This incident will be, of course, of a concern to local residents. Additional officers are standing by. Now, in terms of the incident itself, we are now 24 hours on from when it happened, just after 7 o'clock yesterday, in an area just to the northwest of London called Bushy. It's about a 45-minute drive from where I am now, just outside a cemetery in a part of North London called Enfield. Officers were called to a house just after 7 when they heard screams, and when they attended the scene, they found 3 women there with very serious injuries, which they later succumbed to. Police then launched this manhunt looking for this man, who we now know is 26-year-old Kyle Clifford, a former British soldier. They said that a crossbow was used in the attack and possibly another weapon, and they say that he is known to the family. And we can also tell you as well that the name of the victims as well, Hannah and Louise Hunt and Carol Hunt, the 2 daughters and the mother of BBC horse racing commentator John Hunt. So a really, really horrible tragic incident, and the police investigation ongoing. And as I say, they now have their suspects, and they are appealing for help from the public for more footage, more information in connection with this ongoing investigation.
Wow. Okay, breaking some news right here on the stream. That manhunt over. That's what we do on CBS News 24/7. Thank you so much. Want to take you to Texas, where it's going to take a lot of people some time to recover from Beryl's aftermath. This is video we just got from out of Galveston, Texas. You know, we've talked to a lot of people that thought that they may come out to find some trees down, but instead they found roofs sheared off of their homes and neighbors with great need. And so lights are still out for more than 1 million people. And we're watching the latest numbers right now from the utility companies. Right there on your screen, this is CenterPoint Energy. They are reporting 1,003,000+ people who are in the dark, no air conditioning there. They're working to get the lights back on. But how about we show you the lighter side of what people are dealing with to get through the outages? Because CenterPoint doesn't provide a map. Well, guess who does? A burger company. You know, some of the utility companies don't offer maps, but this Whataburger app has become a real-time, real-life power outage tracker for clever and maybe perhaps some hungry users. You can see on the map which burger locations are operational and which ones are not. And by the way, people in Houston, we see you using this as a guide for what's on and what's off. And where it's on, we highly recommend extra pickles. And a thanks to Whataburger techies. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, trying to find the bright side, right? When we come back, we'll even take you to outer space. Our monitors have a lot of reach, people. We'll take you there in a few. Well, we tell you all the time that we stream worldwide, but we also have video from outer space. We're talking about the Starliner capsule and the crew. They are waiting to come home still. Despite the headlines, NASA insists the crew is not stuck. So while NASA and Boeing bosses talk about getting the Starliner crew home, we got a chance to hear from the astronauts just a little while ago. Joining us live now from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida is Bill Harwood. Bill, you got a chance to hear them. How did they sound?
It sounded pretty good. They're very optimistic. They're enthusiastic. They expressed a lot of confidence that the Boeing Starliner capsule that's had these helium leaks and thruster problems in the mission will get them home safely when all is said and done. There's still quite a bit of testing to go on, but in the meantime, they say they're really enjoying the extended stay in space. It's always fun to be weightless, as they said. So they're having a good time. They're looking great spirits.
Well, the U.S. Postal Service does not deliver bills to space, so that is one upside. You get a break from seeing bills in your mailbox. What is the timeline for testing to hopefully get them home?
Well, it's hard to say. We had a news conference today with the mission managers. It sounds like they're about halfway through the testing on the ground of some of these thrusters like the ones that had problems in orbit. They certainly want to get them down by early August at the latest, probably come down maybe late July, early August, something like that. But we have to wait and see how the testing goes. But right now, unless something really dramatic crops up, it looks like they will come home in the Starliner.
Bill, do you know how cool my kids think I am when I go home and I say, I know the CBS News space correspondent? Thank you so much. I need all the street cred I can get with my kids. And best of luck to everybody up in the Starliner. We hope they come home soon. Okay, so we want to get you now to Santa Barbara County, California, and we're going to be talking about what is the largest wildfire in that state this year. The lake fire continues to burn, and that means an army of firefighters meeting it toe to toe. We're talking about more than 200 fire engines, 2,400 firefighters really struggling against two main foes. We're talking about heat and rough, steep terrain. In fact, in that fight, one structure lost, 3 people injured, and evacuation warnings remain in place for the people who live there. The lake fire at this hour is 16% contained, but there is a positive note there. Yesterday, when we talked to you, it was at 12% containment, so they are starting to make some progress. And let's look live right now as California Governor Gavin Newsom continues his remarks, talking about the state's wildfire response. Governor Newsom in recent days has not been in his state. While so many places north to south have been on fire, he's been on the stump for President Joe Biden. But now Gavin Newsom is there, rallying the troops, so to speak. And really, when I say troops, there is an army out there fighting this fire. We'll watch to see what he says, and we will bring it to you as soon as we get it all together. All right, so let's talk to Zoe about the weather. Zoe, it's good to talk to you. We know information is power when we face heat and fire danger.
Oh, yeah. Information is like a superpower. So knowing what the weather is going to be is very important, especially when we're talking about so much heat, severe weather, as the remnants of Beryl are making their way across the eastern United States, and it's bringing them some oppressive humidity. So, yes, it's hot there, but the humidity is making it feel even hotter with heat indices upwards of 110 degrees in places like Washington, D.C. So that's something to keep your eye on. But the West Coast is not dealing with the humidity. They are dealing with a huge heat dome, dry heat, and widespread record-breaking high temperatures. So let's take a look at those high temperatures because, again, it is going to be near to record-breaking. We've already broken multiple high temperature records all across the United States. Again, while the East Coast is dealing with the oppressive humidity and is dealing with, again, heat indices well above the actual temperatures, it's the West Coast that are going to be seeing some of their all-time record high temperatures as we step out today, tomorrow, Friday, and even into the weekend of weather ahead of us. As again, this heat dome is really not going anywhere anytime soon. Widespread excessive heat warnings, heat advisories in effect as, again, many locations reaching well into the triple digits. Las Vegas, 118 is the forecast high today, 119 tomorrow. That will be their 6th day in a row at or above 115 degrees, one of their longest streaks on record. Again, the heat is going to create the heat illness risk as well. So that is something that we have to keep our eyes on as we take a look at the maps behind me. Heat-related illness is going to be the highest across Southern California, Southern Nevada, and over into Western Arizona. Not just today, but into tomorrow as well. We are going to be seeing more chances of heat-related illness. So water is going to be top priority. Finding time to spend in the shade. If you have a cooling shelter you can go to, head on over to that because we are going to be seeing all through the rest of the week this high chance for heat-related illness. But there is some sort of relief in sight when it comes to the heat across the West Coast as that ridge of high pressure nudges a little bit further north. So northern Great Plains will be dealing with that heat while the West Coast gets a little bit of a break over the next 6 to 10 days. Reed.
All right, so when we see news, you see it as fast as it comes to us on our video monitors, our cameras and crews at the manslaughter trial of actor Alec Baldwin. It's happening at this very moment in New Mexico. So right now we can tell you what you are seeing. Opening statements. Right now, first witnesses called to the stand. We understand law enforcement witnesses are the first ones that have been called to the stand. Of all of the people that could be questioned, They are the ones who took the notes in those first moments after arriving on the set of Rust when this happened. You can see Alec Baldwin there behind an attorney there doing some of the first line of questioning. Baldwin taking notes, listening intently, as are the reporters who are sitting behind him. Alec Baldwin faces a felony involuntary manslaughter charge in the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. You remember, in 2021, the man you see right here on your screen sitting in a courtroom, back in 2021, he was on the set of a movie holding a revolver, that movie Rust. The gun fired, killing Hutchins and wounding director Joel Souza. We're watching that one closely. We've also got our cameras fired up on the East Coast, where closing arguments continue today in the corruption trial of embattled Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. His lawyers telling the jury this week the prosecutors have failed roundly to prove a single charge, but those prosecutors also digging in their heels. They say Menendez put his power up for sale. We're watching that one closely. We understand last testimony is happening there. Our video monitors also just now getting this video out of Gaza. This is showing Israeli troops in active fighting there in Gaza. We got this video from the IDF. They're the source for the video. So right now, the Israeli military claims Hamas and their allies use this specific location as a base to launch attacks. So while this plays out, ceasefire talks are set to resume. But Hamas is saying as long as there's fighting, that handicaps those talks. We'll be watching that one. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide. When it happens, we show it to you. That is us, CBS News 24/7.